Okay. Naas, just we were talking about 1980, the British Lions tour there. And I remember there, I think it was the Bloemfontein test. There was the try by, I think it was Casey, yeah. The quick throw in there that he scored in the corner. That still was still rated at that stage as. Was it Paul Elizabeth? Sorry, you're right. You're
talking about the one where he turned to Tian Stoffberg, and Tian Stoffberg went to Gerry Germers,
yes,
actually.
You're right.
But Gijsie scored in Bloemfontein, and then we had that fantastic try in the third one in the wet. Tian Stoffberg and Gerry Germers and whatever, and scoring in PE in the corner. Yeah.
And I know there was some talk, I can remember there was some talk at the time about how good that conversion you put over, because I think the 1:12:10 in PE. And that heavy ball and how heavy that ball was in that rain to kick from the sideline.
Yeah, but you see, Brendan, I don't know. You know, I look back, and that's why I say it's easy to look back. Okay, but I always think about games like that. There was a game, I think, a Lion Cup semi-final against Province. Worst conditions ever. 80 game against the British Lions, 87 against Transvaal at Ellis Park, and I've got no answers for you. It was, I just felt quite comfortable in very bad conditions. I can't tell you why. I actually enjoyed it. I think sometimes maybe my concentration level went to a different level because nothing was natural. If you take a lovely sunny day at Ellis Park or Loftus or whatever, even at Newlands, Kings Park, you name it, absolutely, you just do it because it's easy, you know. But then suddenly you get a day like that, you've just got to, I think, change your concentration level, and I think I did that. And why, I've got absolutely no idea. I just did it, and you know, and I was quite comfortable, to be honest, in conditions like that. So that was a good one. Even the 86 international against the Cavaliers at Newlands, also from the touchline. Let's just leave it there.
When you look back at your career, because I had this conversation with Ian McIntosh, and it was a while ago. We were talking about Johnny Wilkinson, actually, and then he was talking about you, and we were talking about comparing you to Johnny Wilkinson. I know you can't compare, but we were talking, and I made the point to Mac because he was talking about your place kicking, and I said, when I remember yes, you were a very good place kicker, but I also sort of think that your drop kicks and the way you controlled the game and the way your field kicking was made you really brilliant. I mean, I saw you occasionally have an off day with the boot. Like everybody has an off day with a place kicking boot. I remember you missing one from almost in front against Natal in 1980. I don't know if you remember that, when they won the game. They hadn't won and they haven't won at Loftus ever. And those sort of things. I mean, do you sort of look back and think, well, it was your game contribution? I mean, your drop kicks were, I mean, more so than your place kicking. Would you agree with me when I say that?
Yeah, I think place kicking is part of, because you score a try or you get a penalty. Okay, and that's what I see where you do your part of the deal, if I can put it that way. Where a drop kick is not part of. You know, it's I don't think every guy can, you know, just do it. Okay, it's a little bit of a hand-eye foot coordination. It's just one thing that I just did, and why, I've got absolutely no idea. Why I was quite successful, I think maybe because I was never scared of trying. I spoke to Schalk Nadia one day. I said, Schalk, you've got such a lovely drop kick. Why don't you do it just more often? And it was like he had a feeling that if he might not succeed, that might put his position in jeopardy with the coach, you know, because it looks like it's a wasted opportunity. Where with Beerman, his attitude was, hey, if you want to try 20, just try it. And see, that's why I say sometimes, even today, just give guys a little bit more confidence that you believe in what they're trying to achieve. It's fine. But, you know, I just look back at some guys and I think they had all the qualities. but it was like they were a little bit, I want to say, wary of trying, where, you know, if I miss, what, next one I know, you know, some attitude like that. But I was confident that it's not going to put my position in a, let's put it this way, in a discussion when the selectors sit around the table.
Do you think that there were players? I mean, just in your role as a comments man, watching as well in the last couple of years, I was just thinking, I was watching the Lions, the 2009 Lions series again the other day, and I remember Ruan Pienaar was at flower half. Peter de Villiers chose him at flower half, and he had a brilliant game at Kings Park. And you know, nothing he did went wrong. I mean, even his place kicking and that was, which he wasn't normally a sort of first choice place kicker, it went well that day. And then the following test at Loftus, he missed an early one, and it looked like his psychology just went completely. And for the rest of that game, I mean, Ruan wasn't the Ruan that he was the previous week. And as you know, Mornay Steyn had to come in and win the game for us. Do you think that there are players, there are quite a lot of players that aren't there that are like that, where if they take the place kicking duties and then they make a couple of misses, it might impact on their whole game?
Yeah, see, the unfortunate thing is, and that's why I always will feel for a place kicker, okay? You can sometimes have the best game ever, seriously, and you're not kicking well. Then people will tend to say, but you didn't play well, seriously. And then sometimes you don't really contribute to the game, but you have 5 out of 5 kicks, and then everybody will go and say it's the best game you've ever played. And that's where I think you need to be fair to the player. You know, yes, that is your job. Let's be honest. Otherwise, give it to somebody else. Okay, if you don't want it, if you don't want that pressure, whatever, give it to somebody else. But you know, we all went through. You know, you're going to get that. One day, I had the '86 international against Cavaliers in Durban. I hit the uprights 4 times. You know, and we lost by a point. Okay, but that's just going to happen to everybody. But the thing is, as I say, at the end, if you look at, you might miss the first kick, you might miss the second kick. At the end, I think if you go back to '87 final, the first half, I think I actually missed 2 penalties or 2 kicks in that. But at the end, we won. Okay, and it's always looking at the bigger picture, where because of stats, and yes, he needs to be an 83% or an 85% place kicker, and he needs to be this. And at the end is in that game, how did you play? Because I believe you look at a selection of a team. Okay, kicker is absolutely important. Why? Because the laws allow it. it's not anything else. It's the laws. You can understand that in any game, if you want to look at a rugby game, it's quite an uncomplicated game. Forget the laws. You score 2 tries in the first half, you get 2 tries in the second half. Now it's 28 points. That's it. Okay, 28 points. Because you've got a good kicker. The laws will definitely give you another 4 or 5 penalties. That's over 40 points a game. Yeah. Now, if you want to beat me, score more than 40 points. Now, that's the easy way to look at it. That's why you need a good kicker. But if you ask me today, will I go for the better place kicker or will I go for the better player that's got above average kicking? Okay, I would always say I'll go for the player, because any guy somewhere along the line is going to have a half off day and then be backed up by another great kicker, and that's it. If you look at Frans Steyn, for argument's sake, his kicking ability is unbelievable. Looking at Percy Montgomery, look at so many guys, Mornay Steyn, you put them all there, they can all kick. And yes, of course, one day you're not going to kick it over. We've seen some extremely indifferent kicking in games, but it's fine. It's at the end, yes, if you lose, of course I'm going to take the blame. I'm not going to shift the blame. And that's the way you need to look at it. On that given day, you just maybe didn't contribute to the team as you should have. And that's the end of it.
I was looking, going ahead to 81, and that was a tour that it's a tour that I got interested in rugby, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and still a tour that fascinates me, having been to New Zealand and obviously heard from people there how it was there. Just for you, I mean, politics aside now, just on the rugby as such, it must have been it was an extremely difficult tour to begin with against the All Blacks. But in the context of all the protests and all that, it must have been a terribly stressful tour from a player point of view.
And to be honest, yes, but we can all be over emotional about it and tell all these fascinating stories, how difficult, whatever. I think at the end, you talk to any guy and they all say they actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Firstly, I played against New Zealand. Maybe not the best conditions, to be honest. Not maybe always the way you expect it to be, but we all understand whatever. But let's talk just quickly on that whole thing. I still believe then government made a big mistake. They should have used us as ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
That never really materialized, to be honest. We were like the silent squad touring, okay? And I felt that wasn't really necessary. That's one. But okay, it's also easy to say it now because, somebody might have said something that, could have blown up. I don't know. Okay. But I mean, at the end, we should have been a little bit more part of the bigger picture, if I can put it that way. But let's leave all that aside because there's rights, wrongs, whatever. Okay. Let's talk the rugby. I believe that was one of the better Springbok teams I've ever played in. Still a pity that, we had that selection indifference before the first test. I still believe that actually cost us the first test. I think if they just let Wynand play and just like a normal touring side, I still believe we could have been successful in that first one. But okay, I did also miss a tackle, so 1,000 reasons. Okay, but I think at the end the rugby was fine. The guys really played well. You take that drop kick of Colin Beck against the Maoris. Absolutely fantastic. You look at Gijs Pina, you look at Johan, you look at everybody. I think everybody, in a way, contributed on that tour. For me, the only indifference in that whole tour was maybe here and there a selection of who to play and whatever. But and then, of course, we can talk for days and days and days and days. The final score of the last international is never going to change, and I still believe that team deserved better out of that whole tour. But okay, it didn't materialize. So fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was lucky enough in 2011 to sit an evening with Alan Hewson and chat to him about especially that third test with the flower bombs and the low flying plane and I mean he still said as well they were extremely lucky there. I still said to him, what was that penalty actually for? And he couldn't tell me. He said, was Divan not putting in the ball in the scrum properly or didn't take it? I mean, the reasons vary, but it was unfortunately a bad end to what was extremely close test series. It was a great test series. If you look at the three tests to have it.
But if you look at that New Zealand side, absolutely fantastic side. That's why I say it was one of the better Springbok sides I've played in. That was, there's still a couple of points that you can debate. Morne du Plessis not available. Okay, I think Wynand did a fantastic job as captain on that tour because it wasn't easy. I think overall, a lot of guys will look back at it and will say to you, if we can do it all over again, maybe hopefully in better conditions, they will do it tomorrow again. And that's the way, you've got to look at it. Raymond scoring 3 tries. We're taking North Auckland apart. That was sort of their team at that stage, and Manawat too. So we actually had a fantastic tour. One decision just made it an indifferent tour, and that's sad. But, we're not going to change the result.
I was going to say, when you talk about the tour, sorry, I just wanted to mention, when you talk about the tour, there was also the game against Auckland where you scored 2 very good tries, which I think a lot of people never gave you credit for. Yeah,
but that's why I say it was, everything got sidetracked because of one decision in the final minutes or final minutes of the third international. And that tour should have been okay. But see, you can't then, we're talking rugby. That's what we're supposed to be doing, is talk rugby, But unfortunately, politics did play a part. And I gather a lot of guys disagreed with a number of, pros and cons on that tour. And, every guy's got his own opinion. But let's stick to the rugby. And I think the rugby was absolutely fantastic. Very difficult conditions to play in. And, people don't understand. You go to a field on a Wednesday, but you're only playing on the Saturday, and it's you can't wait to get out, but you just have to, and play pool and play cards and eat, and then try and play 80 minutes somewhere in between. So that's why I say it was all just different, okay, and I think that's what we should, look at. It was definitely different, but it was great.
Do you think if you'd nailed that conversion, because remember after Ray scored his third try that the scores were level, and you do get the impression that Clive Norling just wanted a result. Do you reckon if you'd nailed the conversion to that, and I don't know, did a plane fly? I remember hearing a story that a plane put you off or something. I don't know if that's true, but maybe. I mean, that game was just such a different game. But do you think if you'd nailed that conversion, maybe he would have blown the final whistle and you would have been series victors? Because he played a heck of a lot of injury time.
Yeah, it's difficult to say. If there's always the question, and we can debate this if it was over. But I think if it was over and you look at the final score, it wouldn't have made a difference. Because let's go to the Divan Serfontein incident. Okay, that's what we need to look at. He was never ready to put the ball in, so you couldn't penalize him because he wasn't ready. Okay. Then, in those days, and you all know, okay, even Brendan as an 11-year-old, you should know that. In those days, if you play a quick tap, if the guy ran 5 meters, you can play him.
Yeah.
And you can go and have a look at Dave Laveridge. It's more than 5 meters, okay? Yeah. So, there was no reason to give that penalty. No reason. He gave it, and only he will know. Maybe the stay was a little bit longer in New Zealand, that he felt a little bit more comfortable, maybe. We don't know, okay? And that's why I say, at the end, he's the only guy that will know why he gave the penalty. If you go according to the laws, we can debate that, okay? But it's not going to change anything. That's the sad part. And that's why, for a good team leaving the shores of South Africa, we just came back as a normal team that toured New Zealand, And I still, not because I was part of it, just looking at it, I think the team deserved a little bit more because it was a good team there.
Do you think that team, if you'd played more international rugby in those following years, because you had a lot of young players that were coming through at that particular, you mentioned Colin Beck just now, Johan Hirnes had only just made his international debut at that point. Dani was very, very young in his career. Coral was only 20, I think, or 21 on that tour. I mean, he became a great player later on. Michael Duplessis came through a little bit later. I mean, do you think that team, if you guys had played, I know it's a moot point now, but if you guys had played together for the next 8 years, you probably could have dominated world rugby. I mean, you did beat the All Blacks here. I mean, the Cavaliers here in '86. But do you think that's you could probably have dominated world rugby for a while?
Yeah, if you look at world rugby, you look at 71 Lions in New Zealand, you look at 74 Lions in South Africa. That was, I still believe it all started in 71 or just before that. But I mean, that was a fantastic side. Okay. Then you look at us, 80 starting with the British Lions. That was a good team in the makings. And I still think that if you go 80, then you go 81, that team. Go a little bit, then 82, 83, 84, 85. I think if we were part of the normal rugby scene, a lot of guys might have made different decisions in their lives. Okay, then you go from 81 to 86, and then 87. World Cup and all that. It's debatable, but I was, as I said, very fortunate to be in a good side in 80. Same scenario in 81. Same scenario in 86. And if you take it in our history, a lot of those guys are regarded as some of the better rugby players that we ever had. And I think it's a compliment to those guys. But it started really in 80. That series against the Lions wasn't that easy. And especially after what happened in 74. Yeah. That team should actually get a little bit more credit, because that team was actually putting us, I want to say, back to where we were supposed to be. And that sort of carried a little bit through to 81, but because of the indifferent political scenario, we just never got the full value of that team. And then you look at 86, that was an unbelievable team, really. Okay, but never got the real value, because the real value should have been 87 World Cup, 91 World Cup. But okay, it's just daydreaming, I gather.
Naas, and then obviously 82. You as you said, you were starting to get tackled late a lot more. And in that 81 tour, I believe that's where the whole thing started. The seeds were sown for the Dallas move in 82, 83, I think it was. Maybe just take us through how you got to America and to Dallas.
I was actually approached on our way to New Zealand in 81 in Chicago. A guy came to me and he said, "Would you ever like to be a place kicker in American football?" Okay, and then that was it. That was the discussion. And then I got hurt in the game against Eastern Transvaal and got out of plaster, and got a phone call and said, "You interested?" So I did my national training then in the police force then. So I thought, okay, let me sneak out. So I arrived in America, and I arrived the first day in Chicago, field frozen, couldn't kick, then back down to Tampa Bay. They didn't even know what I was doing there. And this guy that was supposed to organize this whole trip and then I phoned and I said, "Listen, this is, Tampa Bay doesn't even know who's this guy." He said, no, go back. So I got 5 kicks, and then I had this trip around America while I was there. So I went to Dallas, and then I got a phone call from a scout, and he said, "Would you like to?" And I said, "Yeah, give me a shot." And the next day, amazing, the next day in the old Cowboys Stadium, in pouring rain, you won't believe, I actually had just a great day kicking. And then they offered me a contract, and then it was like nobody knew. Okay, I told nobody, and then I think a couple of days, I got back to South Africa, and Pretoria News phoned me one morning, about 5:30 in the morning. Said, "Oh, we've got the whole story." So I said, "Okay, please, just give me a couple of hours. Let me sort out something." And I think that same day, 12 o'clock, I was expelled out of rugby. And that was it. And then back, and then out again, and then I was gone.
And I was going
to say, 3 years later, back. 2 years later, back.
I was going to say, I mean, it's weird to think now in the days of professional rugby as well, but there was almost an anger amongst rugby officials for anybody turning professional or making any proper money out of the game. And as you say, you were expelled, and you almost became a persona non grata amongst the officials because you took up this contract.
Don't make a mistake. I was trying to get myself into shape, and then I'll go and I'll kick, and then I'll just get a phone call from Northern Transvaal. Say, "Listen, you're not allowed on a rugby field, please." And then I'll sneak into another rugby field, and then I get another phone call, "Please." Okay, and then at the end, I got there at the Teachers College in Groenkloof. The dean of the Teachers College said, "This is my field. You can come and practice here." But I mean, it was, in those days, it was just absolutely uncalled for an amateur to even try his hand. I know then rugby league and rugby union, okay, it's two different, but American football had no threat to rugby at all. But it was all about the money thing. And I think, sadly, and that's just the way I look at it. This is nobody else. This is my opinion. I still believe that if we had a slightly different attitude towards that aspect of the game, we might have had World Cups very early in the history of rugby. Because I don't know. I just always felt that a World Cup means money for somebody, and nobody wanted money, and now everybody wants money. You follow? And I would have, looking back at it, I would have liked to see a Frick de Pre playing in a World Cup. Okay, that never materialized. Then you take that whole 80, 81, 86, you go to 95. And unfortunately, some great players never had the opportunity. Let's be glad we're part of it, and we won 3. You know, it just shows you the mentality of South African rugby players. As I've always said, 95 still for me the biggest rugby moment. I must say last year's World Cup win gets very close to that, and then in between you've got 2007. But it's just absolutely fantastic. But I still believe a lot of players should have had that opportunity to call himself a player that played in the World Cup, but that never materialized. And maybe the money aspect then that play a part. That Rugby World Cups only started in 87. And if you think about it, it was, for me, looking back at 87, it was a fantastic tournament. Yes, it was a little bit of a slow start, but whatever. But that should have maybe started in the 50s or in the 60s. I don't know. But I think for me, the ultimate now, looking at any guy's career, is to play in a World Cup.
Nice.
You have to do that. That's it.
Did you? You just made me think of something. That's why I'm jumping now to the end of your career. In fact, it was after your career was over. It was 2 years after your career was over. You came back before the '95 World Cup. I remember at Ellis Park you played in some game. Was Kitch really serious about possibly bringing you back to try? I think you were probably about 37 by that stage. Was that a serious thing? I know everybody wrote about it and they said Naas is coming back to play in the World Cup, but I was never sure if you had really committed to doing that or it was just newspaper speculation.
No, Kitch did phone me and he asked me, but he was very honest. He said, listen, you're not going to be maybe the starting fly-off, whatever, but I just maybe need your experience in this whole environment. And that was the discussion we had, and played a couple of club games to get half in shape. And then I played that game at Ellis Park. And then on the Monday, Tuesday, we had a long discussion and I said, okay, let's move on.
Going back to you, when you came back from the Cowboys, was it to coincide with the tour that never happened? The All Blacks were coming here in '85.
To be honest, I don't know, because I was in America and then I got a phone call from Neely Smith then, and he said, "Listen, why don't you come back?" And then we had a couple of phone calls this way, that way, and I went from the Cowboys. I played actually also for the Dallas Cowboys, winning the national championship in '84. And then I went up to a kicking trial with New England Patriots. And in that time, nearly, we were on a regular basis discussing coming back. And he said to me one day, he said, Dr. Craven said that he will take it to the International Rugby Board for a meeting. And I just heard later, if it's all correct, I've got absolutely no idea. I just believe that it was on the agenda the first day and they took it off, and then Craven put it back on the second day. And at the end of that second day, they changed the law. And I got back into the game. And looking back at it, I can't believe it was actually part of the structures of rugby, because you don't have 100 or 1,000 rugby guys going to start playing American football. You've got to, and that's what I've picked up very early, is you have to go via university, because that's where you build your whole career, is at university level, at the college level, and then you go into the pro scenario. It's like Gavin, people, maybe that picture him, I don't know. But can you believe it? The first game I actually played for the Cowboys against the LA Rams was the first game I saw live. Imagine that one. You play the All Blacks. Okay, you play the All Blacks. But that's the first game you see live also. It's slightly different, isn't it? So that's why I just never had the backing, and I was going up against the best kicker at that stage in the league, Rafael Septien. And but there was a USFL league then, and San Antonio Gunslingers. I went out for a kicking trial with them, and I should have taken that contract. They offered me a contract, and I should have used that to build a little bit of a, let's say, a little bit of a CV. But looking back, there's a lot of things we could have done differently. But if I did, I would gather I wouldn't have spoken to you guys today. Huh?
Was it nice if you look back at the American trip? I mean, obviously at that time it caused a bit of discussion around here. But looking back from your point of view, was it worth it? Did you enjoy it? And did you enjoy the time?
Absolutely. Just the experience. That's one. Okay. And secondly, think about this. Okay. And that's why I say it's nice to debate things like this now. If you think about it now, we were only amateurs. We never had any contract with anybody, so I could have actually done anything in my life, isn't it? It was like a total outcast. Okay, outcast. That's it. I take 5 Northern Transvaal selectors because I was out of the game. Then I got reinstated, and I played against Western Transvaal at Loftus. Also a nice raining game, Wednesday night. And I scored 34 points. I actually enjoyed it. And then on the next day, the Thursday, they called me, say, are you going to cancel your contract? I said, no. I said, okay, you're out again. So I'm out again, okay? But looking back at the experience was definitely for me worthwhile. I think it actually made me a better rugby player, okay? Seriously. Because I was outside. I could look back. Definitely improved my kicking. Absolutely improved my kicking. Because that's all you do every day. You just kick, and so you can actually, like, it's a little bit like pros now. But I mean, the whole experience was absolutely worth it. A lot of people would like to say, it was a failure, whatever. It depends on how you look at it. Ask me, I enjoyed every single second of it because that's the way I always imagine a pro footballer, rugby player, whatever life should be. You wake up at 7 and then you finish at 10. That's a training camp every single day for 7 weeks. And here, if I can not compare because it's different, but I mean, there you turn up on the first day, we're 150 guys with 49 veterans coming in later, and you're trying to get into something, okay? Where on the first day, if you're not 100% ready to go, you go home. Now, and I know, guys turn up in January, and then they're in Rio. If you're not 100% to go from the first day of training camp, you go home because they don't need you. They need somebody that can play. And those things, that's where I think rugby lacks, but it's different worlds, if I can put it that way. It's American football is where I still believe we can really learn a little bit more than we want to, because that is seriously professional.
Gav, do you want another question, or should we send a new link quickly?
It's up to you. Naas, I was going to say the 86 Cavaliers team, the series. If I remember correctly, that was the first time you captained the Boks. You did captain the Boks in that series.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose because you were captain, it might have even made it more enjoyable for you. But did that sort of rank alongside playing the All Blacks? I mean, did you feel when you guys played those, because you played with a lot of passion, I mean, there was a massive crowd in every game. I mean, did you guys feel that you were playing against the All Blacks, or did you feel this is just the Cavaliers? I mean, you didn't play like it was just the Cavaliers.
Looking at their history and their tradition, I think they arrived here to beat us. That's just the way. Yes, David Kirk wasn't here, John Kerwin wasn't here. Okay. But I mean, they weren't here for holiday. Doesn't matter how we look at it. Look at Grant Fox, look at Wayne Smith, all fantastic players and really good players. Andy Hayden, Mary Mexted. And just look at those guys today. They didn't turn up here for holiday. They came here to beat us. And that was an absolute fantastic series. And you know what I also enjoyed about that one? There wasn't too much stuff around it. You played 4 internationals in 4 weeks. And I think that's the way I liked it, you know, because you could really get, I want to say, in the zone. I know that's an old cliche, but you could really get in the zone and concentrate. You don't have to go away, and the same for them. They didn't have to really worry too much about other things. They could really concentrate on the 4 internationals. But as an individual, I really enjoyed it. But to be honest, I also played in a team that I thought really was a good team. And we played against a good team. And it doesn't matter if they look at it as Cavaliers at the end, or we're not going to suddenly call them All Blacks. We call them, let's be fair, it's the Cavaliers. But they played some pretty good rugby, to be honest. And I always say, you know, at least we contributed and assisting for them to win the World Cup a year later. Because, you know, at the end of that year, they toured France and they left about all the Cavaliers players out and they lost in France. And then the next year they won the World Cup against France. So, you know, it's somewhere along the line we contributed to New Zealand's first winning the World Cup. But I think, you know, if you're just honest about it, it was 2 teams playing maybe at a very nice level. That's it.